Good evening, and once again, welcome to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And tonight we're not talking comics, we're talking movies. And what's the biggest geek film out right now? Well, it's kind of a toss-up, but for the most part, we're looking and talking tonight about Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Now, this is the fourth film in the Mission Impossible franchise. Now, those of you, well, you're not really able to go back and view my analysis of the trailer of this film because I had to delete it because of rights issues and so on and so forth. But let me just say at the outset, before we get too in-depth into this, that if you haven't seen this film yet, and you're a fan, not just of the franchise, but you're a fan of really, really excellent action filmmaking, go see this movie as soon as is humanly possible. Now, essentially, of course, we have Tom Cruise reprising his role as IMF, BMOC, Ethan Hunt, and we have, of course, another dangerous, officially unsanctioned mission. Well, the film opens simply enough. You have Josh Holloway, Sawyer from Lost for the uninitiated, since this is a J.J. Abrams produced project. And he, of course, directed the third one, which is better upon reviewing. There's just a really amazing sequence in in just the first 30 seconds. We have this really amazing moment of him jumping off a building, killing two people while he's dropping, and then landing in this big inflatable thing. And then, well, unfortunately, Josh's character, an IMF agent, is killed. And basically, the package that he was sent to intercept was a series of Russian nuclear missile launch codes. Now, Ethan's job, including the members of his new team, which are now Jane Carter, who's played by Paula Patton, who I'd honestly never heard of, never seen anything of her prior to this film. She was apparently in the film Deja Vu with Denzel Washington. She was also in Hitch with Will Smith. And we also have Benji Dunn, who's being reprised by Simon Pegg. Now, of course, Benji was just, he was the tech guy. He was the Q of the IMF branch up until this film, where he was apparently promoted to being a field agent. So their job now is to get these codes back to stop a mysterious would-be terrorist called Cobalt, or codenamed Cobalt, whose character actually played by Michael Nyqvist, who actually played Mikael Blomkvist in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or the Millennium Trilogy in the Swedish versions of the films. And essentially, what this guy is trying to do, he's trying to essentially level the playing field. He is a loon. He's apparently a very rich loon. We don't get a whole lot into his character, but essentially the mission involves getting information out of the Kremlin in this really, again, spectacular break-in sequence. There's a breakout sequence with Ethan Hunt. He's actually been in jail in whatever form. I'm assuming it's Russia. And he's been in prison for a time, apparently because of an unsanctioned hit. We don't get in a whole lot of detail about that. Eventually, things go bad at the Kremlin. They're framed for blowing half of it up, the IMF team, by this Cobalt. And now, basically, Ethan, Benji, and Agent Carter are now all on their own. with the exception of a new addition to the team, which is Agent Brandt, who is an analyst for the, I'm assuming either Department of Defense, Department of, CIA, whatever. But apparently he has some good field skills as well. And it doesn't really need to get any more complicated than that. Because this film has the very best pure action filmmaking that I have seen in a very long time. And believe me, I've seen plenty of action films. And this is one of the best that I've seen in a really long time. It's not big on characterization. It's not really big on plot. It's not really big on acting, per se. But it is huge on action. And just the cleverness of the sequences alone merits a very solid 8 out of 10 on the scale. The way that they're executed merits that next bump up. Because we have Brad Bird. This is his first live-action film. He has directed, to this, my understanding, 3 animated films, which are The Iron Giant, my favorite non-Pixar animated film ever, The Incredibles, one of my favorite Pixar films ever, and also Ratatouille, another great Pixar film. And aside from this, so this is his first foray into live-action filmmaking. You can definitely tell just from the way that the kind of absurdity of these action sequences, he definitely comes from an animation background. Because obviously, the things that happen in here, they're not real. No human being could do the sorts of things that he has Ethan Hunt and his team doing in this spectacular sequence in Dubai, where he's hanging on top of whatever the hell the name of that building is, the largest building in the world now. And that sequence in and of itself, it is actually 4 separate action/suspense sequences in one. It starts out with with Ethan having to scale the outside of the tower to get into the hotel's server room so they can change registrations for a meet that's happening. Then you've got another scene where the 2 people that are supposed to be meeting are not actually meeting each other. They're meeting an agent of IMF. And then you have that suspense, and then you have this really bitchin' fight scene between Paula Patton and a female assassin. And then once that's all over, then there is this extremely elaborate, amazing car chase, foot chase, car chase in the middle of a sandstorm in Dubai. And this says nothing of the finale set pieces with, Brandt, of course, is played by one of the, one of those guys I always knew was going to make it big, and that's Jeremy Renner. Of course, in The Hurt Locker, when I first saw him in SWAT, well, actually, that wasn't the first time I saw him. I first saw him in an episode of Angel, and he was really good in that, but he was also in SWAT, and he was the bad guy in that. I knew that he was going to be somebody who was going to be big, because he was good-looking, he was strong, he had a really good screen presence, and then, of course, seeing him in The Hurt Locker, that was pretty much just like, okay, well, this is his shot now. And, of course, he's been cast as the actor to essentially replace Matt Damon in the film entitled The Bourne Legacy. Now, I don't know, he's not going to be playing Jason Bourne, but it's going to be part of this, amnesiac, disavowed, whatever. That has nothing to do with this film that we're talking about right now. But just the finale pieces with Brandt being suspended with this magnet up in the air, and then Ethan chasing down the main bad guy, and there's this rotating parking garage where all the cars go up in these lifts and they're rotated and put it. I mean, it really is. It's eye-poppingly astounding. There isn't a frame of this film that isn't really interesting to look at visually and isn't really smartly composed. And once there are a few slow moments. There's a really fun moment with Anil Kapoor, who of course was in Slumdog Millionaire, which is a film that I have not seen. But more importantly to me, he was in the last season of 24. He was the guy that, he kind of looks like the Bollywood Elvis. He got that big hair, and you know who he is. And Paula Patton, where it's like, well, he feels like he's seducing her, she's actually seducing him, but it's all just part of this whole it's all part of this game. Tom Cruise, at the age of 50, still knows how to bring the house down. He still has all of his charm. He still has all of his physical abilities. Paula Patton is a nice, fresh new actor for me. I thought that she was really good, very commanding physically, very beautiful. You have, of course, as I said before, you have Jeremy Renner doing a really good job with what ultimately he has to work with, but also just doing a really good job also in the physical scenes and being kind of a decent foil for Ethan Hunt's character. And now Michael Nyqvist, it's almost inconsequential that he's in this film because he doesn't really have a whole lot to do, except appear to be kind of, he always kind of has that thousand-eye stare going. The rest of the film, but most of the charm and almost exclusively all of the humor comes from the Pegg, because he's Simon fucking Pegg. He's just that good. He's entertaining in everything you see him in. He's pitch perfect as Benji. He's a great addition to the team. I'm relatively sure that they're going to be making more of these films. It doesn't rely too heavily on the gimmick of the disguises. One of the things that's actually kind of a recurring theme or kind of a running gag in the film is that the technology that they're using doesn't always work the way that it's supposed to. In fact, very seldom does it work the way that it's supposed to. And that actually gets to be something pretty damn funny. And you have this climactic moment for Tom Cruise, and it's so awesome. Everything about the film is unreal. You have to suspend essentially all disbelief about the way that things in the world work, because this ultimately is an action film. It's a globe-trotting, epic sweep, great action film. It's not meant to be anything more. This is not high art here. But the artistry in which everything is done is great art. So, the technical level and Bird's direction and Bird's visualization of this project is just astounding. And it really is, that's the high point of this film, is Brad Bird's direction. He is going to emerge and a huge action film director out of this, and hopefully, if he keeps this level of energy and intensity and just cleverness up, he is going to be, a director that I'm going to see again and again and again, no matter what he does. There was something else that I did want to talk about the film. I think I pretty much covered all my bases here. But, if you haven't... so that's pretty much it. It's a 9.5 out of 10. It's an almost perfect film. I would have liked a little bit more... a little bit more intricacy as far as the plot itself is concerned, as well as some more characterization from the bad guys. And it does have a couple of nice cameos in it, too, for those of you who think that certain people are actually out of the story. They're not. And, of course, Tom Wilkinson is always nice to see. But, if you haven't heard, I have a Tumblr account now. It has some blogs on it. It's theshadowgallerycomics.tumblr.com. So please come by, say what you have to think about that. And this is Mission Impossible 9.5 out of 10. This is the Shadow Gallery signing off. Good night. We'll see you next time.